Hello Yu-Gi-Oh players and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0. So I was going to make a couple card reviews today. There isn't really anything saying that I can't make more than one video in one day, but I decided it was a more pressing issue for me to discuss, which is the online discussion going on right now among the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community on I wouldn't call it an article quite, it's more like a forum thread on the 100 reasons why your game is awful. I will have a link in the description, but it is a big discussion going on in the online Yu-Gi-Oh! Community right now, so I figured that I would address the points that are made in it to a degree. I don't really want to make this about the article. I want to make this about some of the things that are illuminated, I suppose, in the article. A lot of it is comical and not really, totally serious, but there are some kind of important points, and they have to do with comparing Yu-Gi-Oh! To Magic. And now this is going to be pretty much the last time you ever hear me really discussing comparison between Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. The reason being, I don't really like doing it. I don't think that there's any reason why we need to compare the two games. They are two separate games. It's not like one is the model that the other has to live up to. People like them for different reasons, but for some reason I feel compelled right now to discuss what my opinion is on the difference between them. And in my opinion, there's really only one real objective difference between Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic as games, as game mechanics, the way the game is played, which is that while they do have, there are exceptions to this rule, it tends to be that Yu-Gi-Oh! Plays in Yu-Gi-Oh! Have a higher risk factor to them. And what I mean is that when you make a play in Yu-Gi-Oh!, there is a much greater chance that small decisions involving that play, or one small decision even, is going to lose you the game if you make it wrong. It's much more likely that if you make a wrong decision in Yu-Gi-Oh!, it is ultimately going to lead to your demise. And there are a couple of reasons for that, and once again, there are exceptions. There are, of course, times when making a small decision in Magic is going to lose you the game, but it's much more frequent than Yu-Gi-Oh! And there are a couple of reasons why this might be true. The first is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an extremely streamlined game. It's extremely fast. The games go, well, while, mirror matches can go for an hour and a half, in comparison, matches go very quickly, which means that there is a greater likelihood that you are going to lose over the course of a turn in Yu-Gi-Oh! Than you are in Magic. It's just less likely since we don't have such a heavy resource system, and there aren't as many mechanics in place to keep the game slower. It is more likely that you are going to lose in one turn in Yu-Gi-Oh! Than in Magic, which means that if you do something wrong, it's not necessarily going to be the case that you can make up for that mistake in your next turn, because it's just more likely that you're not going to have a next turn, or your opponent is just going to capitalize on that mistake like crazy, and you won't really be able to make the plays that you could have made. The other big reason why Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a greater risk factor than Magic is because while both games have a very similar life point system, you're just more likely to run out of life points in Yu-Gi-Oh! Than in Magic, or it's faster. The people run out of life points faster in Yu-Gi-Oh! Than they do in Magic. The first reason for that being Yu-Gi-Oh! Simply has a higher damage ratio. Of course, Magic has creatures that are, 5/5 and whatever, but those are much rarer. And I'm comparing those because a 5/5 creature takes 4 direct hits to your opponent to kill them. But in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the same creatures, the same monsters that take 4 direct hits to kill your opponent happen basically every turn. It takes 4 hits from a 2,000 attack point monster to kill your opponent, and you get 2,000 attack point and higher monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! On an almost turn-by-turn basis. So the damage ratios are really high. Also, in Yu-Gi-Oh, you're just more likely to bait out your opponent with your life points. Um, you're more likely to wait for your opponent to make a move. There are a lot more reactive things to do in Yu-Gi-Oh. If your opponent attacks you makes a play, later you can use that play against them more frequently in Yu-Gi-Oh. Case in point, things like Crimson Blader, where your opponent puts a monster on the board, not really suspecting what plays you have available. You hit the Crimson Blader button, run them over. They can't do anything after that, and from there you win the game. But you have to take that risk of losing the life points first. Gores is another example, and there are just a lot more ways that you use your life points as things like costs. Like Solemn Warning takes out a quarter of your life points. I can't think of any spell off the top of my head in Magic that takes out a quarter of your life points to use. So yes, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a much higher risk factor than Magic, but that is not, once again, the point of this video. The point of this video is that if Yu-Gi-Oh! Wasn't run by such a terrible company, and I'm not saying that Konami has like horrible business practices, like they, kill puppies in order to make Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, or, pollute every drinking source in Tokyo or something. It's just toward their player base, Konami just really sucks. And if it wasn't for that, then I think that risk factor and whether a person really gets a rush out of that risk factor or not would be the only thing that determines who plays which game. And I think that the fact that people who play Magic, and even people who play Yu-Gi-Oh! Feel inclined to say that Magic is inherently better than Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a symptom of the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! As a competitive game is run terribly. It tells you something that we were so excited when we found out that they were live streaming Worlds. Like, Magic has been live streaming and real-time covering their major events for years. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Just finally got a live stream of the biggest event of the year. Like, wow. Like, that alone kind of amazes me. And then there's the fact that we don't have a centralized ruling database. We don't have a single place where you can go and look up a card and be like, oh, hey, look, that's the official ruling. Like, the Wikia does have certain rulings, but they leave out a ton of them. They're only the most simple of rulings on the Wiki. And the other problem with that is that the rulings change on an almost monthly basis. And the other thing is it depends on where you live. For instance, in the EU, in Europe, Abyss-Turge, when you discard an Atlantean and add it back to your hand, that Atlantean can activate in your hand. In the United States and Canada, it doesn't. The fact that rulings so substantial are different between countries, that's a problem. And we don't have a unified database, and we don't have uniform rulings, and that makes for some serious problems in the game. Another problem, of course, is prize support. We have awful prize support. But, that's a discussion for another time. And I'm just repeating the things that I have heard on the internet that are the main complaints of Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. And one of the biggest issues, it kind of transitions off of that, is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are too lazy to actually do anything about their issues. I realize that I'm just totally insulted the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, but it's true. How often have you seen us actually rising up against Konami because they did something terrible for the player base? Like how they timed YCS Toronto. I realized the whole Occupy Yu-Gi-Oh! Thing was totally a bust, and it was not particularly well organized. But when something as bad as, say, I don't know, the release of Spellbook of Judgment, or that has a little more to do with gameplay and not organization, but like there are just so many things that go massively, colossally wrong in the organization of Yu-Gi-Oh's competitive play, and we never do anything about it. In fact, this discussion that's going on right now is the very first time in history I have seen something even remotely resembling an organized discussion in the Yu-Gi-Oh community about the future of the game and the beefs that we have with it. There was that one survey that like MCole40 did a little while back, and that was good. That was proactive. What we wanted to see Konami do to improve the game. But it didn't really go anywhere. We didn't do a whole lot. That happened, and we were like, oh, we did everything we needed to do. Now it's over. Konami's going to do, whatever they're going to do now. Now it's their fault instead of our fault. And the fact that we didn't actually fight for the ideals that were universally asked for in that survey, like better ban lists, better coverage, actually decently following the courses of tournaments, actual prize support, things like that, were universally recognized as issues in the game. Those didn't get changed, and we didn't do anything about it. We didn't go out and boycott the game. We didn't, actually try to speak to Konami officials. And now we have this dumb thing going on between ARG and Konami that I'm going to wait for another video to talk about. And we have all these things, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Players still aren't really doing a whole lot. The closest I've actually seen to action in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! When it comes to people seeing problems and wanting to do something about it is when a ton of people quit the game in March of 2012. That was it. Yu-Gi-Oh! Players just are so unproactive about how we deal with our issues that nothing gets done. And I don't have all the answers. I don't know how we would go about being more proactive. I certainly do not have the influence to organize a protest or a boycott or something like that. But I definitely think that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community could bear to actually provide some incentive for Konami to change their ways. And there was something else I was going to say, and I don't really remember what it was. But the moral of the story is that if we want our game to improve, we have to actually do something to make it improve, to give incentive to the people in power to improve it, to do something about it. So there you guys go. That's my discussion on this whole thing. That's probably the last time you'll ever hear me discuss Yu-Gi-Oh! In terms of Magic. And I have run out of things to rant at you guys about, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below, and absolutely discuss what you guys think we should do, and what we can do, and how we can go about actually making some serious change in the game. Meanwhile, thank you guys for watching. I'm your host, the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys.